Okay, welcome back to part three of chapter 32, Origin and Evolution of Vertebrates. Like I said, I promise you this will not be more than an hour. I mean, it will be less than an hour. We're down to just a few slides left. Okay, so hang in there. The first group of amniotes we'll discuss about is our reptiles. Reptiles will include your turtles, tuataras, crocodilians, and majority are squamates. Squamates include species of lizards and snakes or birds. So birds do, fall under the category of reptiles. Here are reptiles share traits, just as we have discussed, kind of as we get more and more specific in our phylogeny. So all reptiles have scales, which what makes up those scales are proteins called keratin, just like what I said about protein and keratin protecting our skin, our human skin surfaces and hair strands. These are keratins that will protect the scales of reptiles as well. Like I said, we are moving on land now, so they do need something that, prevents them from dehydrating, and keratin would be that case. So it would help protect the skin from desiccation and also abrasion, makes them harder, have a protective material somewhat on their scales. And then there would be shell on eggs now to protect them from drying out compared to amphibians that where it is very soft eggs with amphibians. Now we have shell eggs to cover them up and they have all those layers of fluid to nourish the baby, the embryo underneath. And then for reptiles, the fertilization will occur internally instead of externally. So there's got to be something where the males insert its sperm into the female's body. It cannot happen outside of the body. And something about reptiles is that they're considered as ectothermic. I missed the H there, excuse me. Exothermic means that they cannot use metabolism to regulate body temperature, which means, why is that the case? Because whenever we metabolize food, through our digestive system and do a lot of cellular respiration, that actually warms our body up, which is why when we're cold, we start to shiver, is because, shivering is a type of muscle contraction that requires a lot of oxygen and ATP, and that's a lot of cellular respiration to make ATP, and that's why it ends up warming you up, because the more muscle contractions we do, the warmer we're able to generate heat from that. So for reptiles, they cannot do that. They only absorb heat from external means, which is why when you see reptiles at the zoo, they're usually under a heating lamp of some sort because they cannot regulate their own body temperature. They are completely reliant on their environment for cold versus warm. The only exception to reptiles being exothermic are birds. Birds are, on the other hand, endothermic, which they are reliant on metabolism for regulation of their body temperature. Not meaning like reliant, but they have to use metabolism in order to feel warmer, etc. All right, so for lizards who are ectothermic, they will either bask in the sun when the air is cool or seek shade when the air is too warm. See how it just completely relies on the environment in order to drive or keep its body temperature at homeostasis. Last but not least, you have diapsids. All reptiles are diapsids, which means they have a pair of holes on each side of the skull behind the eye sockets where muscles can pass through those holes and openings to attach to the jaw and control the jaw's movement. So this is, very critical. Why, when you think of reptiles compared to sharks, probably their muscles in their jaws are not very powerful. But what allows for them to still, make sure they have, those contraction for catching prey and biting on prey is the fact that they can have this muscle that control their jaw movements. So, first of those species we'll talk about in reptiles are called turtles. Turtles have these box-like shape of shells that have provides upper and lower shields For the turtle itself, inside the turtle is a soft body, so that's why the turtle can't afford for the shell to be taken from it. So the shell is actually fused to the vertebrate bone that is in its skeleton. It is also attached at the clavicles and ribs as well to make sure that there's no way that shell is coming off unless the turtle is dead. Another type of sea turtle, excuse me, another type of turtles is called sea turtles, which are endangered due to the fact that their eggs are not being either raided, or their eggs are being taken away or destroyed when people use the beach either for residential means or commercial means. So they can only, reproduce by burying their eggs into the sand. So this is why nowadays there are a lot of beaches that are protected for these sea turtles. So when there is a pile of eggs in the sand, they usually put a rope around it. Why I know this is because I grew up in Hawaii, and Hawaii have a lot of these protected beaches for those sea turtles. Um, so they put ropes around the eggs to make sure that you don't disturb them. Let the eggs do their thing, and then they will hatch as little turtles, baby turtles that will squirm their way back into the ocean. That's the only way they can reproduce. If their eggs cannot be on the sand, then these sort of sea turtles will not be able to thrive. All right, so for these particular sea turtles, that is, they have very special features that allow them to adapt to living in the ocean. Because they're in the ocean, they have a reduced shell. They don't need to be that big in the water, and because they are able to swim away pretty quickly compared to walking, because turtles can't walk very fast on land. And then for sea turtles, they have these enlarged forelimbs that almost look like flippers on the on a marine animal like a dolphin or something, that allows them to swim quickly through the ocean water. All right, the second group of reptile is Tuatara, which is one of the surviving lineage of lepidosaurs. They look like this. They're not they're not a big dinosaur we're talking about. They're pretty small reptile. It feeds on insects, small lizards, bird eggs, and chicks. Supposedly, they can live over 100 years old, but they are only found 30 islands off the coast of New Zealand, because when back in the day when people colonized New Zealand, they accidentally brought over rats from another area. Okay, so this is where we talked about introduction of new species is not a good thing for the population that's already thriving in the area, because that you don't know how the introduced species will affect the ecological niche or ecological relationship between those native animals. So if it disrupts it greatly, in this case, these rats raided all the eggs of these tuatara that, a lot of them have died off. Okay, so this is why it now only lives on these particular islands off the coast of New Zealand where the rats cannot cross over. So this is why when we're talking about traveling, whether by ship or by airplanes, they always are very, very careful about what kind of things you bring over. And I'm sure now they are very careful about, blocking any way from animals hopping onto the ship and then going on to somewhere else along with the ship that can lead to introduced species. All right, squamates is the another group of amniotes that includes lizards and your snakes. This is the other surviving lineage of lepidosaurs, which is why when you look at these creatures, they just look kind of like those dinosaur pictures we've seen in museums and movies, things like that. So snakes have descended from lizard with legs. We've talked about that, in the previous chapter. They do retain their vestigial pelvic and limb bones. We also talked about that. And the way snakes move is by waves of lateral bending from head to tail. And there are actually what's called belly scales at several points along their ventral side that help grip the ground. Or for some of those belly scales, they will lift the snake's body off the ground as well. Here, if we're talking about what they eat, for snakes, they are carnivorous. They eat meat, flesh, and then so they have a lot of adaptation for that mode of hunting, including they are very sensitive to ground vibrations, just like how sharks were sensitive to water vibrations. Snakes are sensitive to ground vibration. That's how they detect prey because they also have no eardrums. Um, they also have heat detecting organs between the eyes and the nostrils at the head to locate any warm signals even at night. Okay, so even though at night they may not be able to see very well, they can use that heat detecting organ to sense where would there be a warm-blooded animal close by. Especially because they are cold-blooded, they can easily spot a warm-blooded rat or mouse or something that the snake can prey on. They do have a pair of sharp teeth that may be venomous, depending if it's a venomous species of snakes or not. Which is why for venomous snakes, their teeth can actually have a hollow space within where the venom comes through the hollow space of the teeth. You always see when if you ever see a snake, swerving by you, you may be able to see that it kind of whip out its tongue constantly. So that whipping of the tongue in and out of their mouth is actually not for breathing purposes. What they're trying to do is because they can't see very well. They use their tongue to fan odors toward their olfactory organs on the roof of the mouth. They do have olfactory organs, but it's only located on the roof of their mouth. So by fanning their tongue around, they're really testing for what kind of smells am I able to pick up today while I'm, swirling through the mud or the rocks over rocks and sand. So that's how they're able to enhance their smell is by the tongue. And then they have very loosely articulate jawbones, like we've talked about, along with elastic skin that allows them to chomp on very large prey. Even if the prey was larger than the size of the snake's head, they can ingest it because of that very flexible jawbone. Another group of amniotes is under the reptile group is crocodilians, which represents your alligators and crocodiles group. Here's an American alligator, how it looks like, and belong to the lineage that date back to the Triassic period. Um, so it's quite a while ago that it was able to survive till today. They are very large in size and adapt to aquatic habitats. They will breathe air through their upturned nostrils right here, nostril here and nostril there. That's why when you see crocodiles, you will see them coming up out of the water sometimes, and they stay there for a while, breathe what they can, and then they go back in the water when they want to. And then you have birds. Birds are also, like I said, are under the category of reptiles. So these are supposedly archosaurs that where the anatomy was really largely modified for flight. But they say that these birds have evolved from dinosaurs. And we kind of talked about the Archaeopteryx before in another chapter. So I didn't bring it up again here because I know it's already a long chapter. So everything that is modified for flight in terms of anatomy, it is all sort of have the central theme of saving weight on the bird so that the bird is not bored down by a lot of weight. We're trying to lighten up the bird as much as possible. That's what allows them to have an easier time flying in the air. So when you're lightweight, it actually makes flying more efficient. So when we're talking about birds, they actually don't have a urinary bladder. So that's an extra organ that they have to keep in the body that will bore them down or weigh them down. Females only have one ovary, so I guess even that one ovary can make that much of a difference in the bird's weight. Their gonads are very tiny, but they will get larger when it's time to mate, when the season is come to for breeding. So, but normal, other than breeding seasons, the gonads are technically very small, and they are toothless. Oh, come on, even teeth make a difference. So this is how specific we're talking about keeping the bird's weight as low as possible. And then the feathers are constructed in a way that the protein beta carotene, again, keratin, gives it its shape, and the arrangement of the feathers will actually give you some aerodynamics that we see in airplanes. And I would say it's the other way around, where we humans looked at wings that birds have, and we actually invented and then engineered the plane after looking at the wings of birds. But yeah, they say that their wings have this particular aerodynamics that allow them to fly very nicely in the air. Um, yeah, by having feathers. Okay. And then you have large pectoral muscles on the bird's body, which is on the chest area right there. Pectoral means the chest, and an anchor is actually anchored to a keel on the sternum that gives the power, very strong power for flapping the wings. So, for example, eagles and hawks actually have wings that are adapted for soaring in the air. That's nice. So it's kind of soars and balance itself on air currents. So only, when they're in the sky, they only need to flap occasionally to keep themselves afloat in a sense in the air. They don't need to keep flapping their wings in order to stay in the air. It's kind of like how some fishes have to swim constantly, but some fishes don't, that we talk about. So there, of course, then there are birds like hummingbirds that do have to flap their wings continuously just to stay in the air. But now, because of that feature, it actually gives hummingbirds is some benefits. They are the only bird out of all bird species in the world that can hover at something and also fly backwards. No other bird is able to fly backwards, which is why this hovering and flying backwards is very essential for it to aim just right, their beak just right into the flower and get nectar from the bottom. So this is why hummingbirds have these particular adaptation for their diet. So flight enhances usually scavenging, because why did all these things got modified on the bird was because it got selected due to all the benefits for survival and reproduction that that it gives. Again, it enhances scavenging, hunting, because now you can look from above to see where the prey are. In addition to that, birds can then feed on flying insects because they too can fly. So that's another good resource. And most of the birds we know feed on insects. They can escape land predators. And then lastly, they're able to enable migration. Let's say if there is a scarcity in particular food source, they can actually fly elsewhere far away looking for a new food source. And sometimes they can also, fly to a different area, migrate to a different area, and get to a breeding area, like a suitable breeding area to repopulate their population. Birds, compared to reptiles, remember I mentioned this, is that they are endothermic, meaning that they can, have energy or produce energy from metabolism itself. Um, in addition to that, feathers and fat on the bird also provide insulation of some sort. Lungs also is a little bit more interesting because now, we have flying animals, which means they're constantly needing that oxygen for making more ATP in order to flap their wings. So their lungs have elastic air sacs, kind of like our alveoli at the end of our, bronchial branches, which is, there's primary, secondary, and tertiary, and then you finally end with air sacs. I'll call alveoli all over the place. It's elastic, so it allows for very efficient gas exchange, expanding when a lot of oxygen has entered, and then contracting, allow the air to be pushed out, which is, taking in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide. Um, Birds also have four-chamber hearts, which, they keep mentioning that four-chamber heart is a very efficient circulatory system, and that's because of the fact that it can pump very nicely through the blood vessel and separate what's been oxygenated versus deoxygenated. But I'm not going to go get in deep into that. You will learn that in anatomy and physiology. All right, and the continuation with the birds is that they have very acute vision. They have to because they're high up in the air. So they have to have color vision as well and very excellent eyesight to be able to see prey from that high above ground. Which means with all this extra stuff they're able to do, there's going to be an enlarged brain that allow for very fine motor control of using their claws a certain way, for example, to capture the prey. For reproduction, it has to have internal fertilization, so they actually have openings for sperm and eggs on their body, not on the same bird, but different male bird and female bird come together, and within that hole, they have the opening. They have those two openings have to touch, which then allows the sperm to go to the eggs, and their eggs also have shells, just like reptiles, which keeps them, safe and protected, and also protect them from drying out. But something different with birds is that they actually have to keep the embryos within the eggs warm by what's called brooding, which is, if you've seen chickens before, they will sit on their eggs until the eggs are ready to hatch, and then the chicken can start walking away more often. But if not, they're just sitting there on top of their eggs, making sure their eggs are nice and warm and ready for hatching. Now, depending on species, sometimes it could be the mother hen that sits on the one mother bird that sits on the eggs or broods the eggs, or it could be the father that broods the egg. All depends on species. Now, there are birds that can't fly as well, because not all birds can fly. So there are a couple of them here. So ratids is an order of birds that include your ostrich, rhea, kiwi, cassowary, and also emu right there, where they cannot fly. Okay, why they can't fly is because their body structure lack a sternal keel, and also their pectoral muscles are a lot smaller, such that they cannot fly. Penguins is another cute, very cute species of birds, and my favorite, another favorite of mine. That is, they are flightless, but they do have powerful pectoral muscles down here for the purpose of swimming, because penguins can swim, and they have appendages or limbs that look like flippers as well in order to enhance their and be able to efficiently swim. And other unique features of birds that we can't mention them all, but here's a few. The beaks of different birds, remember we talked about, have different sizes based on what type of food they eat. So here's some more examples of them. Parrots have very large beaks that actually can crush nuts and seeds, kind of like that, Galapagos finches we talked about. And the flamingos' beaks, this is something interesting, is because they are filter feeders. Their beak contain a strainer in there, kind of like how we have coriander and strainers to separate something. So for not ostrich, but for flamingos, they have that same thing in their mouth or in their beaks, so that they can filter out what's, edible for them, and then whatever is not then comes right back out. Not beneficial comes right back out. All right, and last but not least, you have the last type of amniotes we have are mammals. Mammals are named for the fact that they have mammary glands for producing milk that will be fed to their offspring. Now, what is milk? Milk is usually something that is made within the mom's body, and they are rich in fats, sugar, proteins, minerals, and vitamins as well. Their hair and fat layer under the skin is what provides or give mammals some sort of insulation, in addition to, being, endothermic to, produce heat by metabolism. They have that extra, either hair, fur, or fat layer underneath the skin that will help them protect against any extreme temperature, as well as conserving water, because again, you're limiting permeability there when you put some fat layer under the skin. All right, another feature mammals have that other, animals don't is kidneys, which is why the next unit in this class is focusing on all the organ systems of mammals, because it's very interesting how they're able to use these organ systems in order to provide homeostasis for the body. So kidney is very important and efficient in conserving water and also removing waste. Without the kidneys, you cannot reabsorb water. The worst part of it is that you cannot filter out your waste. The waste just keeps circling in your body, and a person can die within the day when their kidney stops function. If it's acute kidney failure. All right. So again, like I said, mammals are considered as endothermic. So a high metabolic rate is supported by an efficient respiratory and circulatory system to deliver oxygen in order to do a lot of cellular respiration. With their circulatory system, they also have a four-chamber heart, which makes, the separation of oxygenated versus deoxygenated blood allows for efficient gas exchange. And then you have variety of teeth sizes and shapes that is adapted for chewing many kinds of food. Unlike birds where their beaks is all they have, and whether you have a large beak or a small beak is what determines what kind of food you eat. For mammals, you have a lot more choices because you have different size teeth that can, sort of munch on different materials. We have incisors and the canine teeth for shearing, and then you have premolars and molars for crushing and grinding. In addition, mammals usually have a larger brain compared to all other vertebrates, which means mammals are the most capable learners you can have in the animal kingdom. Um, because of the larger brain they also have longer duration of parental care, which means the parents stay alongside the young more often than other animals do. This is what gives them extra time to tell the offspring, hey, you got to pay attention to what I do. And the offspring will do that too. They will observe what their mommy or daddy do, and then they will do the same. So being around parents more definitely let them learn more about their habits and Adam, things they do to avoid predators or catch preys, for example, is what's critical for the species survival. All right, so there are three major lineages of mammals that emerged about by 160 million years ago. First, you have monotremes, which includes your platypus, and uh, echidnas, which are spiny anteaters. Here, your spiny anteaters, they look so cute. But echidnas are the only monotremes in general are the only mammals that still lays eggs, because most mammals don't lay eggs anymore, okay, where the species actually stays developed inside the uterus of the animal, of the maternal animal. So that's why usually they don't have eggs anymore. But monotremes is the only exception where they do still lay eggs. On top of their bodies, they have hair. They still produce milk, but they don't have nipples. So when you don't have nipples, how the young feeds off the mom is that the mom's body is have glands that secrete the milk on the surface of their belly. Okay. And then when the young comes towards it, they will actually suck the milk, not from a nipple because there's no nipples. They suck it from the mother's fur and allow that milk to be, given to their young. It seems like it's not a very efficient way of feeding babies, because then maybe a lot of the milk will be lost to fur. But maybe they have adaptation for that. All right, so second group of mammals are marsupials, which includes opossums, kangaroos, right here, or koalas, which is not in this picture. So what traits do marsupials have that enable their survival? First of all, they have higher metabolic rates than monotremes do. They do have nipples that provide milk for their young. So you see how there's a little baby kangaroo here, and there's that nipple from its mom. Now, you see how like fleshy and pink this animal, baby animal is. It's because it's almost like it's still in embryo stage. So for marsupial, they tend to give birth to very young embryos before they complete their development. So for these marsupials, development of the baby is only completed after birth, while They are still nursing on in the within the maternal pouch of the mom. So this particular pouch within the body of the mom is called marsupium. So if you've seen kangaroos like this with a little, baby kangaroo hanging out of its pocket, or koala bears are also reproduce that have the marsupium. It's just not as noticeable as kangaroos, but you will see mom koala like this, and then there's a little pocket close to their legs, and there's that baby koala living inside the marsupium. So, and they need marsupium is because their babies are born very, very vulnerable, and it's hard for them to survive if they're just laying out with fleshy skin like that. If there's any skin at all, they need fur. They need to develop thicker skin, etc., in order to survive, or else they will be cold to death or freeze to death out in the environment. So supposedly, when a kangaroo gives birth, their baby is only the size of a honeybee. Now, you imagine some kangaroos are as tall as you and I, but yet their baby, when they're born, is the size of a honeybee. How tiny is that? Your little fingertip. And that little thing somehow has the capacity to climb up from where it came out of into the marsupium of the kangaroo. And notice that they only have some sort of arms. Their feet and legs at the moment are still little buds at the bottom. So that is an amazing way how marsupials are able to have the next generation. I mean, given that, I feel like it feels like the odds are all against them to survive. But hey, they do their thing and able to make it to the pouch, feed on that milk, and then they just stay in there until they're ready to come out. Or sometimes I think their mom also kicked them out. I've read somewhere that's what kangaroos do too. If their child or their baby try to, they're big now and they try to get back into the pouch, they don't let them. And another interesting thing I've watched before and heard before is that the kangaroo will actually bring the baby kangaroo out to poop and pee before they put them back into the marsupium. So that's why their marsupium stays very clean and sanitary for the baby, so that it doesn't, slosh around in its own pee and poop inside the little pouch. So that is pretty something interesting that they just know what to do. Greater biblies, okay, are these guys right here. They are a type of marsupium that has a pouch on their back instead of the front, because these biblies, they kind of burrow under the dirt a lot. They like to dig and dig and dig. So if the baby was at the front of their body, all the dirt is going to go straight into the pouch, into the marsupium, into the baby. So this is why having it on the back makes sense for these particular animals to protect them from getting hurt while the mom is busy, digging. And then, so the lining of the uterus and extraembryonic membranes is what forms a placenta. This is what's, again, different from mammals compared to other animal species, because we have a placenta, which is a structure that allows nutrients to diffuse from mom's blood into the embryo. The embryo never have to eat while they're inside the tummy, inside the uterus, such that nutrients are being delivered straight to them through the bloodstream of the placenta. Third group of mammals is called eutherians. Eutherians are commonly called placental mammals because they have more complex placenta. Yes, the marsupials also have placenta, but they're kind of simple looking, because if you see right here, this is that amnion that surrounds a marsupial. Here is some blood vessels going around, and this is already the endometrium of the uterus itself. So it's a very, very simple placenta when we're talking about marsupial. Whereas for eutherians, the placenta is literally almost like an organ. It's pretty thick. It has lots of spiral blood vessels, or excuse me, blood vessels that supply the blood both to the from the mom to the baby. And there's these specific structures in there that allows for that to happen. And they're called chorionic villi, but you don't have to know that. But just, in terms of anatomy, that's what, complex structure means for the placenta. And they also have a much longer pregnancy. We don't give birth till fleshy pink animals, excuse me, fleshy pink embryos, because they will not survive. Any baby that is born before the third trimester runs into the risk of dying, and they have very low risk of making it because of the fact that they cannot survive outside the mother's womb. They are supposed to have a longer pregnancy for these mammals, eutherians. So if any earlier, then their health might not be as great as those that were forming in their mom's body full term. So much longer than marsupials. Embryos will complete development be within the uterus, which is why I say they won't come out like a see-through pink fleshy embryo. Is because of the fact that they should complete the whole entire development. All the organ systems are in place. All the arms and fingers, feet and toes, legs are all formed with their muscles and bones. And then all the eyes, sensory organs are all formed. Surface of the skin, hair is all formed before they are born. So the one Eutherian actually have a lot of species. The book also have a whole another chart for all the species of the Eutherians or groups of the Eutherians. So I'm not going to go over that. It's already very long for this chapter. So just briefly, we'll mention primates. Okay, I won't even talk about humans because we'll mention more about humans as we get to the other chapters on organ system anyway. So for primates, it includes lemurs, tarsiers, monkey, apes, and also humans. We do fall under the category. Um, so what primates have as a shared trait that enhances their living or thriving on land is that they have hands and feet that it can be adapted for grasping. It is very important to have dexterity and you know um, swift and good control movements of your fingers, because of the fact that you can maneuver a lot more things when you have fingers. For example, you see a banana, you see a monkey picking up a banana. It can use its finger to peel off the skin of the banana and eat the banana. You give a banana to a dog or a cat, they cannot peel the skin, and it makes eating a lot harder for them. They can only kind of use their mouth and neck to eat whatever their food is. So again, so that's why hands and feet was a major development and improvement for mammals to live on land. Digits, which are fingers, now have flat nails instead of claws because we don't need claws. We have, we have become a lot smarter now with primates and eutherians, such that we can think of ways to get our food instead of just slashing with our claws. We can think of ways to get food. Like for humans now, we purchase food from the supermarket. Um, there are skin ridges on fingers for eutherians, which this actually is what makes our human fingerprints. Okay, so we will look in on the very tip of our fingers. We have all these grooves within our skin that gives us those fingerprints. It is for the purpose of attaching the skin layers together, though, because you have epidermis and then a dermis of the skin. So epidermis is attached to the dermis by those grooves. But for us humans, daily lifestyle, we have discovered it as fingerprints to identify ourselves. And then we also have opposable thumb. This is only true for monkeys and apes, and of course humans. Opposable thumb meaning that you can touch the tip of your thumb to every one of your fingertips, which some animals cannot do. This is what allows us to grasp very well, in a sense, and precise movements of our fingers. For all primates other than humans, they actually have a big toe that's widely separated from the other toes, allows their feet to also grab stuff. Like our feet cannot really grasp things. You may be able to kick things, mush things, crush things, but you cannot use your toes to try to pick up a pen, for example, unless you train yourself for that. I've seen people that can do that. But our feet is not like the feet of monkeys or other primates, but they have those for their ability to fly from tree to tree, in a sense, or swing from tree to tree. um, for primates, we have a much larger brain and shorter jaws, which means that equals a flatter face. Our eyes are also very close together and front facing, which actually allows for what's called depth perception. So when our eyes are in the front like that, compared to a fish where it's on the side, over the two-eye visual field actually overlaps, and this is what creates our depth perception. So what I tell my students in anatomy is how they realize they have depth perception with two eyes is that if they cover one eye with the hand and you're only seeing with one single eye, try to reach for things as you normally would, like cover one of your eyes, and then try to reach for the keyboard buttons on your laptop. You will see that the first time you go, you don't really know how far your finger have to reach before you hit exactly that particular keyboard. And that's because you lose depth perception when you only have one eye. With two eyes, what we call binocular vision, that's how we're able to tell depth. And primates have really well developed parental care and very extended as well. And we can exhibit very complex social behavior. We can show love, we can show anger, we can show that we're unhappy, crying, etc. So these are things that primates can do as well, in addition to humans. And then we can navigate and actually maneuver trees for actually at least primates. They can, that swinging through those tree branches that quickly will require a lot of eye-hand coordination. Or else if you can't reach that tree, plump down you go on the ground from who knows how high those monkeys are swinging around, which can lead to very severe injuries. So they have to have excellent eye-hand coordination. And that is all I have for you for chapter 34, which is Origin and Evolution of Vertebrates. And there are only a few practice questions for this chapter because the question the book gave was not that good. So whatever doesn't make sense or is not very direct, I don't pick them because then students are like, what? So if they're not helpful, I'm not gonna post them. So here's the first question. Which trait is shared by all vertebrates except cyclostomes at some point in development? Mouth with jaws, because cyclostomes don't have jaws. Which group soon outcompeted amphibians on land due to their watertight skin and eggs? So it would be reptiles because reptiles is where they start to have eggs. Which chordate group has all four key chordate characteristics as an adult but not just as an embryo? So there are chordate group where they only have the four key main characteristic or traits as an embryo. But there's one that have all four, whether you're adult or embryo, and that was lancelets. Which osteichthyon structure allow bony fishes to control their buoyancy using gases from their blood? Swim bladder. Which statement is false about the lateral line system? Again, in fishes, it is used in digestion. That is false. Lateral line system is mainly for sensing vibrations in the water. So that's true. Lateral line forms along the side. That's why it's called lateral, and it is only found in aquatic gnathostomes because as land animals, we don't need to feel water vibrations. And that is all I have for you for chapter 34.